to be here for this lunchtime webinar, which is another one in the series of Quill Uncovers. And what we're trying to do here at Quill is share with you good experiences that we have had and observed both in our own business and in other businesses to help smart lawyers effectively run a smart law firm. And today, what I want to share with you is the future of the law firm office, and in terms of how we can use data to help manage and support the staff in our business. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Julian Bryan. I'm Managing Director here at Quill, and on this occasion, I am going to be leading and running this webinar on a solo basis. Normally, I have some colleagues from one industry or another alongside with me, but today it is on a solo basis. And I want to take you right back to my childhood as a starting point. And as this picture on the screen illustrates, it doesn't take a lot for you to guess that my childhood was spent on a farm down in West Dorset. And my father had a great adage in his farming life, which was, you make hay while the sun shines. And the last 18 months or so have had its ups and downs, but when the sun has been shining, particularly during the end of the stamp duty holiday, there's been a lot of sun shining, a lot of extra hours and work has needed to be done to get the harvest in or to get the property completions. And there are always going to be times when there's a need to get that harvest in, so to speak, in a law firm, just as much as on a farm. But I think we need to be observant and recognizing of the pressures that puts on our employees. And the question is, how do we identify those pressures from data, and what can we do about it as a respecting and caring employer? So I want to give you a few insights in terms of what we have done at Quill. Before I do that, for those of you that don't know us, we've been around as a business supplying software and services to law firms for over 40 years now, since 1978. There are 9,000 users that use our cloud-based platform. That's probably representing 750 law firms. We process about 5 million transactions, employ about 100 staff. We're roughly 43% male, 57% female in our business. A very small turnover of staff of just 5%, with 40% of our staff having worked with us for more than 5 years. For those of you who don't know, at the center of our business is our legal accounts, practice management software. Of course, if you don't get your legal accounts right and the compliance surrounding your legal accounts right, then the SRA or whoever will be soon along to shut the doors on your business. On top of that, we have a practice management system which allows you to manage your clients and matters. And if you wish, there's a further module which allows you to manage cases and documents integrating with Microsoft Office. For some firms choose to outsource their legal cashiering, and that is a service that we provide for roughly half of our law firm clients. And alongside that, quite often goes payroll. So when people outsource legal cashiering, they're outsourcing their administrative finance function and will outsource their payroll as well. And we also provide an outsourced typing service for those of you that don't need a full-time typist, but want somebody based in the UK to do their typing for them at the same time. So data management and management information, rather. So to me, there's a big difference between data and management information, and the trick is turning the data into that MI. So a bit of background about us and where we store our data. There are 3 big cloud infrastructure providers around these days: Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. We choose to use the Google Cloud platform, where we store our data all in the UK. Being in the UK, we are compliant with what I call old and new GDPR. It's a flippant reference to Brexit in the sense that there has been a tiny bit of divergence between UK, or there now is UK GDPR and EU GDPR, and we are compliant in both contexts. We allow within our contract to support aggregation of data, analysis and sharing, provided we don't identify individuals' personal details, and I'm going to be sharing with you some of that aggregate data in this presentation. The core of this is around an index that we created at the beginning of the pandemic that we called Quilldex, which tracks and forecasts transactions. And from that, we know what volume of data is going to hit our bureau, which is very good from a planning perspective, but it also gives us a chance to look back at history and see what has happened and what we can learn from that, particularly in terms of staffing levels, etc. We've also used this data set to change our invoicing model. So we invoice clients in our Pinpoint Bureau based on the number of transactions that have been processed by their cashier, by their dedicated cashier during the previous month. So yesterday, being the 1st of November, we ran our invoice run based on the data we collected and used during October. We also use Quilldex for resource planning. And I'm finding one or two people now interested in using our Quilldex data for third-party planning at the same time. And that's an area I'm very, very keen to explore in the future. Excuse me. So, data sets. I want to share with you some background data to then illustrate the point in terms of the pressure that we can see from that data on fee earners, the pressure on cashiers, the pressure on an individual, how are employees feeling, and I'll use Quill as an example for that, and how do you secure the engagement of your staff given all of those individual pressures, and what sort of engagement benchmark can you use to make sure that your employees are working with you and not against you. So let's pop into the background data. So just to give you a context of what we're dealing with here, this is the profile of matter types that have been opened by our 9,000 or so users between March and September 2021. Predominated by conveyancing, as you might expect, but a good mix of other matters there as well. When one looks at it in terms of transactions, then there's even more transactions on conveyancing matters than other types. Again, if you stop and think about searches and so on and so forth that generate disbursements that need to be settled by your client, then there's inevitably going to be more transactions on a conveyancing matter than let's say on a corporate matter. So if we look back in 2020, and we look at the trend in matter openings, we can see obviously that as the world shut down at the end of March, so matter openings in 2020 crashed. As the world or as the UK restrictions on COVID started to lift, so we saw matter openings start to increase. And then there was a seasonal dip towards Christmas. What I should say, this is an index, so the base starting point is 100, and 100 is the number of, or is set at the number of matters that were opened in January 2020. If we then overlay with that 2021, we can start to see the pattern emerging in terms of the stamp duty holiday changes in March, and then again at the end of June, and again if we had the data running through, we would see it running through to the end of September as well. So that's the background that we're dealing with in terms of some quite interesting seasonal trends and patterns caused by pandemic-related matters. So then we looked at this data in more detail and drilled into the document management data, and when were fee earners uploading their documents to our document management system. And we categorized the upload time into normal 9 to 5, evenings and weekends. And what we found is that 22% of our fee earners using our software are only uploading documents between 9 to 5. You could say, well, the people that upload documents, 90% of which are between 9 to 5, are probably just coming into work at 8:30 and maybe going to work, home from work at 5:30. So you could add on that next to 33%. So you end up with saying, well, roughly 55% of people are having, shall we say, a normal life, normally uploading documents within normal parameters. That means that 45% of the fee earners in the firms that you are working in or running in some cases are uploading documents, let's say before 8 in the morning, after 6 at night, and at weekends. Do you know that? My question to you as employers is, do you know that? Is that acceptable? Do you know which of your fee earners are actually doing that? Is it having an impact on their welfare? Is it having an impact on their engagement with you as an employer? I don't know the answer. It's something that you need to consider and bear in mind. Then there's the cashiers. So if we look here, firstly, the red line represents the capacity of the cashiering teams in Quill. And I've ignored furlough for the moment. We did take advantage of furlough, but I've ignored furlough at the moment. So we've got roughly a capacity to cope with 180,000 transactions a month, as indicated by the red line. But during the course of the last 18 months, the demand for cashiering services is represented by the blue line. And we somehow had to cajole, encourage, motivate our cashiers to cope with the peaks caused by the stamp duty holidays at the end of March and at the end of June and at the end of September. And of course, those peaks are even more accentuated than this graph indicates, because those peaks came through particularly in the last few days of the month as everybody scurried around to get those completions across the line. So that was a challenge that we had to tackle. Then there's the pressure on the individual. How many of you know, again, almost looking back at the fee earner data, when your staff are actually working? Now, you can get tools to analyze the pattern of email sending and receiving behavior of your staff. We happen to use Google as our back-end server, and there are a number of tools that you can use to analyze either your entire team's email behavior or that of an individual. I've chosen just to look at that of an individual. I've chosen to use a tool called Email Meter, and the density of the green on this chart indicates when this person was actually sending the most emails by hours of the day and days of the week. And it's quite interesting looking at this individual. You know, occasionally he or she was sending email before 7 in the morning. Quite a lot of email traffic going out between 7 and 8 and 8 and 9. Pattern of the day, fairly ordinary. And then again, you're seeing this person pretty busy between 5 and 6 in the evening. And again, as evening progresses, quietening down. But this person seems to have a bit of a burst of email activity after 10 o'clock at night. Into the course of evenings and most days of the week, including the weekends. So is this person working excessive hours? Well, my wife thinks so. This is actually me and my working pattern a month or two ago. And I probably am almost working silly hours at times, but I guess that's the characteristics of an owner of a business. So my question to you as employers is, how do you know, or do you know, whether your staff are working some of these stupid hours, and is that appropriate? Are they being rewarded appropriately, or are they engaged sufficiently with you as an employer for your business? So then we need to ask ourselves, well, how are our employees feeling? And we at Quill conducted what we called How Are You surveys. And we ran these throughout the length of lockdown, and will continue to run these surveys of our staff, just to get a feel for how they are, how engaged they are, and are there any problems that we need to work with and identify. So the surveys were just that, ad hoc surveys. How are you? They were entirely voluntary to complete, and we typically got between 50 and 75% of our staff responding to each of these surveys every 6 weeks, every couple of months, and that is pretty good going in a busy organisation like ours. We asked them what office they were normally based at. Do they have the right equipment to do their job? You know, headphones, screens, second screens, etc., etc. How productive were they? How productive they felt they were, and what was their well-being? Do they feel depressed and disengaged by working at home and being shut in a small flat, or were they just as happy as they would have been had they been in the office? And we also followed up on critical well-being scores. So if anybody said, yeah, my well-being is not great at the moment, then our HR team on a confidential basis did intervene and chat to that individual to make sure all was well. So these are our well-being scores on average during the period from the beginning of lockdown, June 2020, through to the last survey that was done in May 21. Now, a low number means good. So this is on a score of 1 to 10. So the average score was probably over this period 2.5, somewhere between 2 and 3. But fluctuated as time went by. I think people got a bit cheesed off during the beginning of this year, just after Christmas, but things have enhanced again since then. But because we measured productivity and we measured well-being, we were able to plot the well-being score against productivity. Now, on the left-hand side of this chart, I have got a score of 1 for my mental health, which means I'm quite happy. I'm not struggling with any form of mental health, and my productivity score is nearly 10 out of 10. At the other end of the scale, where I am struggling to work at home, cooped up in my small flat, or whatever the circumstances might be, my productivity was also falling. Now, I think this is a really, really important point for employers to acknowledge and recognise, that basically people whose mental health is compromising their well-being are also going to be having compromised productivity. So as an employer, it's really important that you recognise where those mental health problems are occurring, and that you actually can try and do something about it. Because not only are you dealing with the well-being of the individual, but you're also improving the productivity in your own business. So it's a double win if you can get it right. We also asked our staff whether now, and now being the survey date, or the survey dates from a couple of slides ago, was the right time to reopen the office. And I'll talk about our reopening strategy in a minute or two. So again, those people, as you might expect, that were quite happy working at home, didn't want the office to reopen. Those people who were struggling with their well-being just couldn't wait to see the office being reopened. We are now in in November in a situation where our offices are open. We do expect our staff to attend our offices twice a week. We are at a maximum at 50% capacity at any one time by spreading staff, if you like, rotas over the course of the week. We are fortunate in one of our offices to have plenty of car parking. In the other office, we have made arrangements to have more car parking available, so nobody has to use public transport. And we do have some social distancing measures in the office in terms of spare desks are blanked out, etc., etc. So, how do we secure the engagement of our staff when we have got these challenges of supply and demand, if you like, going on, where we want to collect the hay from the field, but we can't afford to compromise the well-being of our hard-working and very, very loyal staff? So we have an adage that not only do we want to provide beautiful and efficient software and service solutions, but we are very much focused on the accountability towards our staff, our clients, and our community. So ensuring that we have this engagement with our staff is really, really important to us in Quill. So what does accountability to you actually mean in practice? So we have a mental health first aider. Our HR manager has been formally trained and formally qualified as a mental health first aider, and that is a formal qualification in the same way that you may have a physical first aider on your team. We also have the mental health first aider on our team. We have what we call a one-to-one engagement program, where every manager meets with their team members on a one-to-one basis once a month. And that is not only to assess where we are in terms of work and performance, but it does give the opportunity to raise any concerns either way in terms of, is this member of staff okay? Are there any welfare issues that need to be addressed, etc., etc. In many of our departments, we now have daily stand-ups. So our software development team will get together for, could only be 15 minutes, first thing in the morning, any issues in terms of developing our products, anything we need to worry about, anything happening in the wider world that we need to draw to our attention, any technical issues, any technical challenges. It also runs in our support team and our implementation team. So if we're busy converting data for a new client, for example, then we will have a quick review of those matters first thing in the morning. And that also replaces the good morning, how are you, when you walk into the office. You get a chance to see everybody and just make sure that everything is right in the world. We also, and we try to do this at sort of unexpected moments, put together gift bags. Of goodies for people. So we did a gift bag around Valentine's Day. We did a gift bag when we launched a major release of our new software. We did a gift bag in the summer, which included some seeds so people could grow plants in their garden and so on and so forth. And we also created a WhatsApp group. I think many companies created WhatsApp groups. It's entirely voluntary to be a member of, but the WhatsApp group was a great communication forum, and we still use them now as a way of a bit of banter at the weekend or sharing information of something more pertinent. And we also run News, Views and Eats. Now, News, Views and Eats used to be a physical meeting. Julian and colleagues would go to each of our offices, share company news, aim to receive the views of staff, and we would always do this over lunch, and we would provide lunch. Obviously, News, Views and Eats has now gone online. We still do the news. We have an employee forum that gives us views normally beforehand, so we can cover those questions off within the meeting. And rather than buying lunch for everybody, which was very impractical, we put an Eats allowance into everybody's wage packet of about £7 every time we run a News, Views and Eats meeting, which is roughly every quarter. So here is an example of some of the gift bags that we sent out to all our staff, whether it's sort of snacks to keep you going. We did the chocolates. The middle one, chocolates, is a Valentine's celebration, and then the mini bottle of bubbles was when we launched some new software. And you can see that the staff have made comments about these engagement gifts online on LinkedIn, etc., etc. So we feel that we've done reasonably well in securing engagement. Here is the detail in terms of returning to the office, what we've now done. I should add, we've also put wristbands into everybody's back to work pack. The idea of the wristbands is that if you're completely chilled about COVID and want to give everybody a hug that you haven't seen for 18 months, 20 months, then you wear a green wristband. If you're paranoid and don't want to get close to anybody and you want people to stay away from you, you wear a red wristband. And if you're a bit, don't really care, you can have an orange wristband. You don't have to wear them. It's just an alternative way of approaching the differences in people's attitudes towards this virus. So finally, engagement benchmark. How do we know whether what we're doing is really working? So we use a tool called, or a company called Best Companies. And what Best Companies do is provide a survey tool to actually help us identify whether our staff are happy and engaged, or whether our staff are disengaged. And Best Companies, some of you may have come across the Sunday Times Best Companies to Work For. It's the same organization providing those Best Company to Work For statistics that we are using. And I'd encourage anybody who's concerned about engagement to get in contact with Best Companies and see where they can help. So this, back in May, when we last did this particular survey, is the level of engagement we had, with most of our people being in the green areas of engaged, but a little bit nervous, highly engaged, highly satisfied. One or two people bored or disengaged, but the majority were over on that right-hand side and top right-hand quartile. We also have what they call an overall engagement score. And prior to COVID, we were knocking around at sort of the 1-star level for engagement, which is nothing to be ashamed of at all. I mean, it's a 1-star out of a 1 to 3 accreditation. But during the course of the pandemic, we put a real effort into looking after and making sure that our staff were engaged, because we knew there were going to be times when we might have to take advantage of furlough. And then when we saw the stamp duty scheme come along, we knew there were going to be times of pressure. So engagement to us was really, really important. And this survey, again, is entirely voluntary. We as Quill don't see, or as managers of Quill, don't see the individual results, so it's entirely anonymized. And we have managed to maintain, or get and then maintain, our level of engagement up to the 2-star level throughout the whole of the pandemic period, which I'm pretty proud of. And shows that some of the engagement tools that we've been using have helped to address that supply versus demand challenge that we have. We also can see here, just as an example for you to see what the Best Companies survey gives you, is a heat map of well-being, and this is real data. So some of our staff, were feeling pretty knackered at the end of the day. You can see in that bottom bar. But on the whole, lots of green on the chart to feel that people are feeling happy and engaged in terms of their well-being. So ultimately, at Quill, we are one of, at the moment at least, one of the top 100 best mid-sized companies to work for. We are one of the technology's top 50 companies to work for, and we are one of the Northwest's top 100 companies to work for. And I think what I'm trying to share with you is that by using data, you can actually get into the guts of a more soft issue of human resource management, and using data in your own practice or in your own business can help you quite significantly. I think it's important to take time out to understand that management information, and it's important to convert that data into MI. So I was given rows and rows and rows of data in relation to what time of day people were uploading their documents, but we sat down and analysed it in a simplistic way, and came up with a method of analysing, of reviewing that data in a way that was meaningful to us. I think it's really, really important to empathise with staff and to recognise that journey of making hay with the sun when the sun shines. And I always remember my mother would always make sure that there was plenty of orange squash and biscuits, etc., for when we're bringing hay in before the rain was due the next day. And it's understanding those pressures on individual staff. And I'm not on commission for Best Companies at all, but a tool like Best Companies does give you an industry benchmark so that you can start to understand how you as an employer are engaged, or how your staff rather are engaging with you as an employer, and how you as an employer are comparing with other like-minded and like-thinking companies. So I don't know whether we can do questions today. I'm going to try and stop sharing my screen. I'm never very quite good at doing this effectively. But let me, where's it gone? Let me see if I can stop. How do I stop sharing my screen? About, oh, folks, I always get this wrong to find the sharing button. I think I have just lost, have I lost this? Well, hello, folks. Sorry about that. I pressed a button in my excitement at the end of that presentation. If anybody wants to ask a question, please pop a question in the chat, and I will try and answer. I think, Neil, you may have to take those people off mute. So if anybody's got a question, pop a question into the chat, and let's see whether we can see any questions. Do we have any? So what is the single biggest challenge facing the legal sector in the aftermath of the pandemic? Good Lord. I think there's 101 challenges facing the legal sector. I was talking to my insurance broker not so long ago, who said to me that cybersecurity was going to be a huge, great challenge for not just the legal sector, but the whole legal and financial sector. I think another huge challenge is efficiently dealing with what's turning into a hybrid working, of working part of your life at home and part of your life at work, in an office, I should say. What will the modern law firm office of the future look like? My own view is that it will be probably smaller than it is today. I think unfortunately, I am only 2 years into a 5-year lease in our office in both Manchester and Liverpool, so I don't have the flexibility to do anything just at the moment. But if I was renewing my lease just now, I would certainly probably go for smaller space with lots of facilities to conduct online meetings. So I think there's probably need for lots of smaller offices within the office, because having an online call with a client or a third party when one is at one's desk in an open plan environment, it can be quite of a challenge. So I think there needs to be more breakout space for people to be able to make a phone call, make an online call from a quieter corner of the office. And laptops. Laptops is to me a must, and Quill has equipped every member of staff with a laptop. So physically, where you sit is not a restriction. You can work in a small cubicle or at an open plan desk or at home. Should law firms be prioritizing employee well-being or the functioning of the office environment, or should we be able to manage both? Well, I think they go hand in hand. If you get the environment in the office right, then that will help you get the well-being of your staff right, and they do go hand in hand. I think it's important that staff are encouraged or expected to attend an office a couple of days a week. Would be my minimum, and I think that helps with their well-being. It helps with staff training. It helps with staff development, and I think it helps with productivity as well. I think everybody working from home forever in any medium-sized business is not going to be productive in the long term. It's not sustainable. But I do respect the fact that we don't all need to be physically in an office all of the time, all 5 days of the working week. So what has been the response from your staff on returning to the office? I don't know, that's a question for me. I think people were a little bit nervous. So I think, when was it? Beginning of last week, there'd been a bit of noise over the weekend in the media about Plan B being implemented by the government, and a number of employees expressed a bit of nervousness that should Quill be one step ahead of the game and moving back to Plan B, or moving on to Plan B. We debated it. The leadership team of the business got together, considered that as an option that we should sort of execute to go to Plan B, which was to work at home by default. We slept on it for 24 hours, so in the end, we felt there's a bit of Monday morning-itis, one of my new phrases, Monday morning-itis, going through the business. We held our nerve for 24 hours. Things seemed to calm down, and half term has come along, which I think has probably helped, and we are in a calm situation. My understanding is that the government were very keen not to move to Plan B ahead of the COP26 summit. Whether once that is passed and we get into the second half of the academic term, whether cases will rise and we'll be back to reconsidering Plan B or not, I don't know. But I think staff have enjoyed the chance to catch up with people again and work in a hybrid way quite happily. If you could go back to the start of the pandemic, what do you wish you'd done differently as an MD? What lessons did you learn? Well, I could go back to the time at which I signed up on a lease on our office. I might have rented less space. We were pretty quick out of the blocks to move to home working. I think the irony for us was that we thought we had a business continuity plan, and we did. What we hadn't appreciated, so we tested it as things were getting a bit hot in that February time last year. We tested the continuity plan with different teams in the business, and the continuity plan meant that they had to take laptops home with them, as opposed to the desktops they were using at their desks. And what we established was that there weren't quite enough laptops to go around for everybody. We always had a view that we could cope with part of the business working from home. We didn't realize we didn't quite have enough laptops. So that was a lesson that we learnt quite early on. And I think maybe we were being, as a business pre-pandemic, we were too stuffy in terms of accommodating home working. We were too concerned that standards would slip and common working practices would slide away, and in reality they haven't. So I've learned that you can trust people a lot more than you probably think, provided you have the data and the systems in place in the background to monitor what's going on. Well, I don't know. Oh, no more questions from that delegate. So I don't think there's any more questions. If anybody does ever want to get in touch with me, and I would gladly share our experiences, gladly share what we have done, and if anybody can see a value in the Quilldex data that we have produced and want to make use of it, it's available on our website. But I would love to work with somebody to commercialize that data. If I'm being honest, I think it's got value to us as an industry. So I am now going to leave properly and elegantly, not as I did earlier on, and apologies for that. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar, and look forward to seeing you again at another webinar in the future. And I'm going to close the webinar at this point. Cheerio, folks.